A very pleasant evening to you out there. Many thanks for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. My name is Joyce Jakada. Tonight on National Talk, we begin in Kaduna State, where the Nigerian Army has taken responsibility for Sunday night drone attack, which hit a gathering of villagers marking Molud festivity in Tudumbiri community in Kaduna State. The General Officer commanding 1 Division Nigeria Army, Major General V.U. Okoro, explained that the Nigerian Army was on a routine mission against terrorists but inadvertently affected members of the community, leading to the death of over 80 persons and 70 injured. And on COP28, a nation groaning under huge debt burden, inflation, rising poverty, diverse reactions have continued to trail the reported number of Nigerians who attended the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, which took place in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, at a time that the federal government was urging the citizens to make more sacrifices. Nigeria accounts for 0.319% of global carbon dioxide emissions, but her 1,411 delegation is joined the third largest with China after the host nation UAE with 4,409 and Brazil 3,081, followed by Indonesia with 1,229, Japan with 1,067, and Turkey with 1,045. Recall that Africa accounts for only 4% of the global carbon emissions, despite being the continent which suffers most from climate change. However, the federal government said it did not foot the bill of the 1,411 delegates as COP28 records put Nigeria's official figure is at 590 and the other 821 as overflow participants. Reacting to the number of delegates Nigeria sent to the summit, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, demanded roll call and costs incurred by federal government delegates and also urged the National Assembly to probe the incident. In same vein, the Labour Party, LP, and its 2023 presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, described the action as wasteful, noting that it was sad that the federal government, which ought to be cutting the cost of governance, was being wasteful. Tonight on National Talk, we dissect these issues, and joining me to discuss this is Mr. Douglas Francis. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Thank you. Good evening.
Indeed, it feels good to have you despite your busy schedule. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's begin with the talk about the aerial bombing as described by the Nigerian Army, which occurred last Sunday in Kaduna. And this isn't even the first time that we're hearing about aerial bombing. Some time ago, it was in Nasarawa State, yes, and all tagged to drone attack. But I would quickly like to get your reaction. How would you describe this incident? For so many people, they describe it as lack of competence on the part of the army, drawing from the fact that this is not even the first time. But we saw how that the Nigerian army, even through the chief of army staff, saying that this is regrettable. It was targeted at terrorists, but unfortunately, some of the civilians that were celebrating the Molud were actually affected, and it led to the death of over 80, and then 70 are actually being injured. Some people say this is unacceptable, but while a lot of people have called for investigation, in fact, thorough investigation, we saw how the president said that there needs to be investigation. In fact, the vice president, after visiting the scene of the incident, said that those people that eventually are found to be guilty of any charges will be punished. So what do you make of this incident?
Okay, first of all, I want to condole with the families of those who lost their life. It's not their making. It's not their intention to die the way they died. But nevertheless, it's quite unfortunate. And coming to the Nigerian military, it's so sad. Though there are so many sides to the story. The military, when it happened actually from investigation and what we had or what we gathered, the military were actually, they didn't open up immediately when it happened. There was a kind of a conflicting report between the military and the community. And eventually, I think when it happened, they didn't know the magnitude or how deep the situation was. Because from what we gathered, over 85 people were killed or more were killed on that day. So at the end of the day, when the military saw the hits, they began to come out. Well, for the incident, according to the military, there is this periodic flying of drones to areas where they are suspected that the terrorists are. And this particular location, Tudimbiri in Kaduna State, they are suspecting, according to military intelligence, that the terrorists are largely found in that locality, and that some of them are disguising themselves as civilians, as preachers. So when they got an intel, because they didn't just act in isolation, they got an intel that there are terrorists in that locality. You understand? Apart from the air bombardment, there have been some grand movement of intelligence. So on that particular day, they got the information, and in the process, I think that was when, they shot some targets, and, civilians were killed. And when these civilians were killed, the military felt at least they've hit their targets, but not knowing that, civilians were involved. But there are lots and lots that, because of this, we will not be able to come out on air and be saying. But the most important thing is that it's so sad. And I like the quick response. The military has owned up. The federal government have sent a delegation led by the vice president who visited the scene. The minister for state for defense, Matawali, the former governor of Zamfara, also led. The Senate and the House of Rep. A lot of delegations have gone there. And for the panel of investigation is a good one. But one thing we are saying here is, it's not just setting up the panel, but there should be more in combing where these terrorists are located. If actually they are from intelligence, they are saying terrorists are located in that area, then more investigation needs to be done, not just on the civilian that were killed, but the people surrounding, terrorists surrounding that vicinity. And for the families of the victim, yes, the dead, people have died, people have been killed. What government needs to do is to compensate the families of those who died, because the president, in sympathizing with the families, there are people of Kaduna State, said in his statement, which is described the incident as very unfortunate and disturbing, while expressing grief over the tragic loss of Nigerian lives. He said full-fledged investigation. That is key. That is what is important. Full-fledged investigation. And if you look at the locality, these are local set of people. Look at the houses. And at times, if you look at some of these things, yes, there might be atom of truth that, they are located there. But then, the lives of the people is important.
I'm really concerned about the impact of this kind of error bombing,
yes,
especially in a state where we know that for some times now, they've been faced with series of attacks,
yes,
bandits, different kinds of terrorists. Some we just are being tagged unknown gunmen.
Yes.
It's in this same Kaduna that students were kidnapped. Like a lot of series of occurrences that has to do with attacks. And coming to talk about error bombing and then the implication on the region. Some people have talked about the fact that for a military body such as the Nigerian Army, there should be due diligence, there should be professional and even operational intelligence. We recall that in a statement by the Nigerian Army, they talk about the fact that they got information and they are actually bandits, and even the people around that village
admitted to
have
me that
suffered attacks by bandits, and because of that they saw them, and these are the things they do, they disguise themselves and all of that. But even international bodies have come to talk about the fact that there is need for application of intelligence. You don't just assume, but rather there should be due diligence, there should be professionalism in terms of operation. Some people have called for the removal of the Chief of Army Staff, but what do you make of this removal? Should he take responsibility, or should he be removed because a group made an error that the Nigerian Army have come out publicly to accept and say that this is actually regrettable?
No, I think I want to start from the call. It's laughable. Somebody calling, or a group calling for the removal of the Chief of Army Staff or the Chief of Defense Staff at this time. No. You see, the Nigerian military that we know. These are Nigerian military that they've conquered in so many countries. They've done heroic work in nations like Congo, Rwanda, and other nations, which we are all aware. Now, before they ventured into the aerial bombing, remember they had an intelligence. Now, Nigeria is not the first country, or rather, is this the first time things like this are happening? But then, like the Nigerian military said, it was a mistake. Their target was not to kill civilians. I don't think there's any right-thinking military that will want to target civilians at no cost. The war in Hamas and Israel is ongoing. Remember, even just last week or 2 weeks ago, before the expiration of their truce, there was a particular location where the Israelis targeted, and unfortunately, it was not their target. They hit the wrong place. So hitting the wrong target is not new. But what is important is admitting that what you did is wrong, and also finding solutions. And let me tell you, you see, it's so sad that the so-called superpowers, even in their domain, up till today, America has not conquered terrorism. They've not conquered, attacks from Islamists and the rest. Look at, Niger Republic, Mali, Burkina Faso. They still suffer the same thing. But what we are saying here is, if the military haven't gathered, because they worked with an intelligence, and it's quite unfortunate that when they went there, maybe there was a miscommunication or something, and it happened. Now it happened, they owned up. Call for the sack of the military chiefs does not arise. Rather, what should be the intent is, it has happened. What measures are you taking? We are looking at the aftermath. If the vice president could go to the affected communities and sympathize with them. And remember, the vice president did not go on his own. He went based on the authority of Mr. President. And the voice of the vice president, I'm sure, is the voice of the president. So it's a two-way thing. Number one, the military has accepted that they made a mistake. Number two, going forward, what is the way forward? That is what we should be thinking of. But
I think it's actually applaudable that we've seen how that even some civil society groups have called for calm and even peace. Even the president have, while expressing the shock about the tragedy and all of that, called the people to remain calm. And a lot of other individuals have come out to say, oh, remain calm, it's an error. And even though there are some elder statesmen that are saying, no, if it was the other religion, some people want to add religious undertone to all of that. And that was why I brought the question about a region like a state like Kaduna, that over the years we've seen how that they have suffered in terms of attacks and all of that. We've seen people turn the part of streets, even in Abuja National Assembly, to protest about that, even making reference to 25 farmers that were killed in Niger State and all of that. So talking about measures, this event is really a sad occurrence, and we've seen how that the Chief of Army Staff have even donated like 10 million to some of the victims that have been, the Vice President to make donations. The government have made assurances of ensuring that those that are injured, those in the hospital, the families of like the survivors, and then those that are actually bereaved are going to be taken care of. A lot of rehabilitation programs are going to be taken to that environment. And beyond saying, we hope that at the end of the day, all of these things are actually being implemented. But since this has happened, let's talk about the accountable measures that can be put in place to avert such occurrences. Like I said earlier, this is not the first time we've seen that in Nasarawa. We've seen that in other places, all tagged as error bombing. And we've always seen the tag regrettable and all of that. But people are also concerned, if that can happen, where next? And all of that. So what are the accountable measures that can be put in place to avert such occurrences?
Okay. Before I go into the accountable measures, I want to let you know, and we are all aware, that for quite some time, Kaduna has been relatively peace. Issues of attack and some other things were not that much pronounced, except when this issue came. And looking at what the military is trying to do now, one thing we should know is intelligence is key. That is one. Number two, they should double check. And whoever in the investigation, whoever that is involved, should be brought to book. You see, the major problem with this nation is we set up a committee. At the end of the day, he might not see the light of the day. And recall that even in Maiduguri, when the heat, Maiduguri and Yobe, this is not the first time that we're having such mishap by the Nigerian military. In fact, I remember some time ago in Maiduguri when the heat was hot, there are villages that have been targeted like that. And at the end of the day, it was civilian casualty. But going forward, the military should own up. And in doing that, they should know the kind of places that these terrorists are operating. Because one thing about these terrorists is, some of them disguise like villagers. You see them in the streets, you see them selling, and you think that they are normal human beings. I remember something that happened in Wase, when militias from Zamfara took over some parts of Wase. And from intelligence we gathered, some of these militias, they live their normal life. They trade in the market. You see them doing, going, and the rest. So, serious intelligence need on the issue of these, areas where the attack took place. And secondly, I think government on its own part must wake up to their responsibility. Now, it goes beyond coming to say, we have visited the victims, we have given them relief materials. What next? What about the emotional and psychological trauma? These are things that needs to be done. And the way forward is that let them look at their internal architecture and look at it very well and move forward. But I still repeat, what we need, the call for the sack of these people does not arise. And you know Nigeria is a very funny country. Some people might take advantage of it. And you know people might look at it and say, yes, from the other side. The question is, it does not matter whichever side. I know there were a period in the southeast where people were killed by the Nigerian military. They went to a village because they heard that IPOP is operating. And they went there, they shot, killed a lot of people in the community. And at the end of the day, they discovered that, they were the wrong targets. So these things happen, not only in Nigeria, but all over the world. But going forward, we must take precautionary measures.
Indeed, what happened in Tudunbiri in Kaduna State is really a sad occurrence, and we hope that actions will be taken to forestall such occurrences while we condole with the families of those that lost their loved ones. Well, let's move straight to the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, which took place in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. That has generated a lot of criticism. Nigerians have poured outrage. People have called on the president that if you can even be competing with China in terms of numbers of delegates, then why not compete with them in terms of productivity, in terms of production? Instead, that delegation of 1,411 indeed has generated a lot of reactions. People say in a time where you're begging the citizens to sacrifice, in a time that you're begging the citizens to be patient, we all know how that times are actually hard. Nigerians, since the removal of the fuel subsidy, like about 6 months now, people have been going through a lot in terms of prices of goods and services. The inflation is really hitting hard. Poverty rate, a lot of people are suffering. But then we're seeing such large number of delegation going for this COP28 and in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. I just want to get your reactions to these 1,411 delegations that went for this COP28.
Yes, the COP28 climatic summit is not a bad idea. It's a good summit, that is meant for the United Nations Climatic Change Conference, where issues of climatic matters will be discussed. And if you look at it, it's a good one so that they will know areas and measures, to look at the needs and challenges of member nations. But coming back home, that delegation is quite large. Now, we're in a country, what's our GDP product? What's the rate
large compared to the largest economy and
Beautiful.
In Africa? Is that number really large?
You see, it amazes me when the federal government is saying China took this delegation, UAE took this delegation, and Nigeria. Now, what is the financial commitment or the transport costs from China to UAE? and the host nation. These are people that their economy is buoyant. Their economy is moving. Now, in Nigeria, do you know how much it costs to fly somebody from through and fro, or hotel accommodation and every other thing? And remember that they will not fly economy class, they will fly first class. I mean, the number is much. Now, where the federal government missed it is, what is our economic gain? What are we to benefit in this conference? If you are sending such delegates, and it beats my imagination that even the federal government will come out to defend the lists or the number of delegates that went there.
But do you not think that they are probably looking at the impact, and that is why they went with
what
such
impact? What is the question is what impact? Are you telling me 590, but the original number is over 1,411?
But they said some of these people sponsored themselves.
My dear, these are just cover up. If federal government is sincere, why didn't they release the names of those that are part of the entourage at the beginning, until there were a huge cry from Nigerians? Labour Party presidential candidate started, that of the PDP went, another started, civil society started raising eyebrow. And if you even look at some of the people that were delegates, they had no business in Dubai. Some of them went there just for florities, to go there and relax themselves. So there need to be checks and balances. We're not saying that the conference is not good. We're saying the conference is good, is better, like that of the Niger Delta, which we know there is a lot of oil spillage. We know what is affecting the Niger Delta. Now, if we are looking at the delegates coming from the Niger Delta, it's a different thing. I watched on television the governor of Bayelsa, when he led some key delegates, went there to discuss issues that have direct impact with their state, their region. But what about some other region? So the conference is not a bad idea, but taking that large number at this critical time, what's the price of fuel in this country? You understand? What's the situation of the common man in this country? We shouldn't waste such resources at that level. Rather, some of these resources should be injected into the economy. Now, go to the market and look at prices of things. You see, whatever we do, like we always say, you see, government is there to meet the needs of the people. And there are basic things in this country that if we put together, it will work for us. So, the major concern of government should be this. If not because of the huge and cry, we would have known that this is the number of people that went there. And number two, what were their responsibilities? What did they go there to do? Did they go there to present talk? Did they go there to, maybe discuss with other people that are coming from other nations? For China, you look at their population, look at their economy, and look at their productivity, and look at what they are bringing out. But in the case of Nigeria, tell me, what is working in this country? Just a few days ago, P&G, Procter & Gamble, said they are withdrawing their operations in this country. Now they depend on imports. What they are supposed to be producing here, they are shutting down all their companies, all their industries to move out of Nigeria. And others are following suit. And you tell me that all is well.
Well, there are actually a lot of reactions to that number of delegates. But I would like us to just go on a quick break. When we return, we take the reactions. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break.
The gospel of Jesus Christ is our Heavenly Father's plan for the happiness and salvation of His children. ECWA Television International shares the gospel of Jesus Christ because the world must come to the realization of the power in the atonement of sin through the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. Sharing with the world the message of hope that can clean anyone from sin to enjoy the peace that is in Him. ECWA Television International is live 24/7, preaching the message of salvation and truth to the world. Pray for ECWA TV. Support ECWA TV. Be part of ECWA TV. Keep watching ECWA Television International.
just joining us, this is National Talk on ECWA Television International. Thank you for staying with us. We have been looking at and assessing the aerial bombing as described by the Nigerian Army, as well as the delegation to the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, which took place in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. And a lot of reactions, a lot of outrage has continued to pour out, looking at the present situation that Nigeria is actually faced with. And quickly, I would like us to take some reactions. By the way, our phone lines are now open for you to call and add your voice. I've been discussing with Mr. Douglas Francis. Thank you for your perspective and analysis on the program. And quickly, in series of tweets by presidential candidates of the Labour Party talking about Peter Obi, he said, in a twist of sad irony, let me congratulate the giants of Africa, Nigeria, for matching the great China with the same number of contingents at the ongoing COP28 in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Nigeria's contingent to COP28 total 1,411, the same number as Chinese contingents. He says, while China's budget for 2024 is about $4 trillion, about $860 per head, Nigeria's budget is about $33 billion. That's about $1,065 per head. China has a high human development index with a ranking of 79 out of 191 countries measured, and Nigeria has a low HDI with a ranking of 163 out of 191 countries measured. Nigeria has more people living in multidimensional poverty than China, despite China having several times our population. He added, most importantly, the vast majority of those in Nigeria's delegation to COP28 are either non-relevant civil servants or relations, friends and hangers-on of high government officials. Most of them hardly understand or have anything to do with climate change. He added, the huge contingent is out at public expense at a time where most Nigerians can hardly afford food and basic needs as a result of economic hardship. I pray earnestly that a day will come so soon enough that miracle of migrating numbers of its citizens out of poverty over a relative short time. He said, as we have kept emphasizing, we must stop waste as a tradition of our government and nation. We urgently need to cut the cost of governance and invest in production. We need to de-emphasize unnecessary ceremony and showmanship as a mode of government behavior. We need to tie spending to necessity and national priority. A new Nigeria is possible. We only need to do the reasonable and the necessary. And on the part of the Human Rights Association of Nigeria, HURIWA, it says there is a big shame that Nigeria is attending the international event around the strategic issues of consequences of climate change with such a massive theme, thus increasing the impact of fossil fuel on the environment. Also, the national coordinator of HURIWA, Emmanuel, added that Tinubu's government continues to show that it cannot curb wasteful spending. Of the 1,411 delegates, 590 were sponsored to attend the conference by Nigerian government, which is currently battling with record inflation and out-of-control exchange rate, a burning debt profile, and millions of its citizens sliding into poverty. The total to and fro flight ticket for the 590 delegates is thought to be 885 million as estimated. This is an unmitigated scam and it deserves to be absolutely condemned. Nigeria's official delegation shouldn't be more than 10 since Nigeria runs an embassy in the UAE or nearby. These are reactions coming from the presidential candidates of the Labour Party, as well as HURIWA and even the national coordinator. The PDP has also called on the National Assembly to actually probe into this matter, talking about Nigerians have continued to emphasize cutting the cost of governance while you're pleading with the people to be patient, yet we're seeing how that you're spending humongous amounts of money to and fro to take like 1,411 delegates for such a conference, like as important as it is, but the number should have been reduced or slimmer than what we have. What's your reaction to this tweet?
Well, like I told you earlier, the number is quite large. Now, if you are spending over over 1 billion naira on travel expenses, what will you spend on infrastructure? What will you spend on Nigerian refineries? What will you spend on the masses? It's quite large. Like I said earlier, if not for the huge and cry from Nigerians, the federal government wouldn't have told us that it's 590. Because earlier, when they brought out the statistics. And the question is, would you believe the federal government if they told you that it was 590? No, the question is no. What we need is not traveling out of the country to go and celebrate, but rather let's come back home and do the needful. Nigerians are suffering. The economy is in tatters. Nothing seems to be working. That is why you see the Japa syndrome. You say, let's come back to the basis. Let's look at the basis. What are the issues in this country? What are the challenges in this country? What are we facing in this nation? And how do we bring solutions to this issue?
We're talking about the challenges we are faced with. The climate change is one of the issues we are faced with. And that's why I said earlier, do you not think that we should be more concerned about the impact now of those delegates, even though we've seen that some people, like from the tweet, it's been said that some of them are just friends, some of them are just
of course, it's for jamboree.
And all of that, even though the government, the presidency have come out to disregard that, no, it's not for jamboree, but they are also considering the impact, because some of the people that attend are from even private sector and all of that. So should we not be talking about what the role of these people back home here rather than looking at the number?
Okay, I just told you something. I said the governor of Bayelsa went there with some of his delegates from Bayelsa State, the South. You know what climatic change have done to their own region. Now, for people like that, it's a little bit acceptable. But for most of the delegates that are there, they don't even know why they are there. Let me give you an instance. There was a friend of the son of the president, a lady, who they say is just a family friend, that was found in Dubai. The pictures were all over the social media. Just somebody that just graduated from youth service.
So
found herself.
Probably she's one of the people that sponsored herself.
Sponsored where,
my
dear?
The government are saying we only paid for 596.
See, let's call a spade a spade. We know how Nigeria works. Now, let me give you an instance. I put it to you that if government, you have your own money, and government is saying, come and enter the aircraft and let's go to Dubai, what will you do? Even though you have the money to take care of yourself, will you spend that your money? No, you prefer to go to the jamboree. So the question is that are begging for answers. Those delegates, what were their role in Dubai? Apart from the let's take for instance some of the ministers. You get it. If the minister for communication, who is the mouthpiece of government, is there, there's no cause for alarm. But why are you taking? You have a minister, you have a special advisor, you have a special assistant, you have his aides, you are taking all of them there. You have more than 10 governors going there. You have agencies. I mean, no. The government is not sincere. What we should be concerned is the less number. For China and Dubai, they know the issues they have on ground and they could deal with it. But talking of Nigeria, what are we dealing with? What did our delegation went there to do? Now, in the coming days, officially the program will come to an end. Now, that is on the 12th, from what we gathered. Now, let's wait for the impact and see. Do you think what they went there? Because I know for the South region, that one is understandable. But what about others? So, what government needs to do is not to waste funds on things that are not necessary. We are not saying that the conference is a bad one, but the number should have been reduced to a barest minimum and use those funds to walk back home. And now, if you minus 590, you have about 821. And let me ask you a question. Private sector, 821 private sector driven Nigerians will go to Dubai to do what? What's the strategy? Okay, let's look at their organizations. Let's look at their pedigree. What are they going there to do and what are they bringing back home? These are questions that need answers. So if you look at it in the nitty-gritty, you know that there is something that they are not telling us. But like we know in this country, a lot of them went there for jamboree, whether we like it or not, no matter how we paint the color.
Well, the presidency have continued to disregard that they are not there for
course,
actually jamboree.
If you are the mouthpiece of the president, would you have said otherwise?
Quickly, let's go through the response by the presidency. You see, the presidency, however, explained that the 1,411 delegates at COP28 in Dubai are not all government funded and include sundry groups such as business persons, civil society actors, among others, who have different roles to play at the conference. And in an article by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, talking about Temitope Ajayi, she said that as the biggest country in Africa, biggest economy, and one with a bigger stake on climate action, as a country with huge extractive economy, it is a no-brainer that delegates from Nigeria will be more than any other country in Africa. What do you make of this justification coming from the presidency as well as the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity?
It's so sad and laughable that...
Isn't this convincing enough? Like, say, as the biggest country in Africa, the biggest economy, and one with a bigger stake on climate action.
Bigger stake on climate action. What is the percentage in total percentage in Africa? It's just 4%. You understand? It's just 4%. And Nigeria as a whole, what's our percentage? That's the question you should ask. Look, Rwanda, South Africa, Namibia, Kenya should be the ones that should be able to be speaking more. But if Nigeria is claiming, according to what the special assistant is claiming,
no, but it's well known that we have the biggest economy.
We are not doubting that. You have the biggest economy, but how has it translated to the citizens? You understand? If other smaller nations, their economy is moving and the citizens are enjoying, then tell me in Nigeria. Look, it's not just giant of Africa that matters. Take, for instance, look at our facility.
Big for
that
nothing.
is what
I say,
we are
no, you
saying.
should not be pessimistic.
It's not to come here and make noise and say we are giant of Africa. At the end of the day, we'll have nothing to show for it. Let me take you, not fight back. Do you know that in this nation, we built our national stadium during Obasanjo's regime? What's the state of the national stadium today? You understand? And what's the state of the national stadium today? Now, if you go to South Africa, the stadiums that was consulted during the World Cup in 2010 are still there. Looking good, looking fresh, everything is okay. So compare South Africa and Nigeria. And number two, you see, governments being who they are will never own up. If they were sincere, before they left, they should have, there's one thing we should look at. Before they left, they should have told us the number of delegates that were going out, what they are going to do there. But was it not when they were huge and cry from citizens of this country that government had to defend themselves? So it's to show you that government is not sincere. If they were sincere, they would have told us the number of delegates that were going to go there, what they are going to do, what the impact they are going to bring back home. But now that Nigerians knew that so much people, and let me even ask you, you are sending 821 private individuals, civil society. What's the state? What's the pedigree of those civil society? Even the investors that are going, what are they? That's why I mentioned to you earlier. I said, for some state governors that went there, yes. For some business that went there, yes. Some civil society that went there, yes. See, there are names that you call. You understand? For instance, if like Tony Lumelu is found there, you know he has a conglomerate, you know what he can do, you know his pedigree. And there are some other organizations like that. But I just mentioned to you, if you check the social media, you will see this couple. I'm telling you, what is she going to go and do there? And besides that, if you are a minister and you are going with over 12-8, what will they go and do there? You see, Nigeria as a nation and our government should own up and tell Nigerians the truth.
So what do you expect now they have gone? What are your expectations?
My expectation, like I told you earlier, is that for the South-South region, I know that they will bring a lot of impact, come back and look at the issue of the oil spillage they have in their region. And also, if the president comes back with his delegates, we also expect that at least somewhere, I saw somewhere they were talking about the loss and damages and also funds that will be generated, because I think at the end of the day, some funds will go for nations that have challenges like this. The question is, if the funds come to Nigeria, what would they do with it?
Because as it is, relationships are being built, businesses and all of that. So
Yes.
what do we expect? Because beyond just talking about the attendance and then the number of delegates, let's also look at the impacts on our nation, on our economy. We've seen how that even representatives of the government have continued to talk about the bilateral relationships and that have already discussions ongoing. And so those people that have attended, especially from the government, they have come out to say that, oh, we sponsored 596. What do we expect them as they come back? Because it is our responsibility as citizens to hold these people accountable. Beyond expectations, we should hold them accountable. And this is by putting to them what we expect them to do. So what should they do so that Nigerians can feel the impact of such a meeting and attendance?
That's why I told you, if you listened to me earlier, I said when they are back, we expect that with what they've gathered, they should be able to put it to use in this country. Challenges that we are facing in terms of the climatic change, some of the regions that are having this issue, funds will come definitely from the United Nations, which you are aware. Funds will be distributed to nations that have challenges like this. Now, when they come back home with these funds, how will they put it to use? And you talk about foreign relations. Till today, we have challenges with our visa. With Dubai, the same UAE you are talking of, we still have challenges with them. Saudi Arabia, some couple of weeks ago, Air Peace took over.
President Tinubu, when he came in, there were some forms of reconciliation.
What was the form of reconciliation? That's where I'm heading to. In Saudi Arabia, when he went for the lesser Hajj, Air Peace brought over 300 and something passengers. Right in the nose of the president. They sent over 200 and something back. And the president was there. It was when they started making some discussions that they had to redo. Look, we're not saying that their visit there is wrong. But our message and our cry as Nigerians is the number you are taking there is much. That is one. Number two, if you have gone there and gathered a lot of knowledge and gathered a lot of connection and gathered good bilateral relations, we should see it taking effect. But note you that there are organizations in this country, companies in this country that are leaving Nigeria. So these are things that are begging for answers. If you are talking about good bilateral relations and investors coming into this country, what is happening to the investors you have there that are leaving the nation? There's a question mark. A question mark that is begging for answers. But on a general note, we expect that when they come back home, what they've gathered, we'll begin to see the effect. And I pray, I hope, that what the president and his team is saying, just today, they talked about that crude oil very soon will land in a Dangote refinery. We are waiting. We just hope it's not a wild goose chase, so that they will not say A and begin to do B.
Thank you sincerely for your perspective and analysis on National Talk. We really appreciate
Thank you.
And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for staying with us on today's edition of National Talk. Our government must understand and know that their primary responsibility is to protect lives and properties. And it is our collective responsibility as citizens to hold our leaders accountable to their primary responsibility by speaking out when we should. Thank you for staying with us until we come your way next week on another edition of National Talk. You stay blessed.